Namaskar. Welcome to the first online Kashmir festival organized by the Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora in association with I Am Buddha. As part of this festival, this episode today is a discussion on the subject of the role of the bureaucracy in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the way forward. For the discussion, we have a panel of very eminent retired civil servants who at various stages of their career have played a very important role in the administration and various positions, and they have all a vast experience. I shall introduce the panelists. First, Shri Kuldeep Khoda, who retired as Director General of Police and served as such for 5 years, which is some kind of a record. And he has had a varied experience before 1990 and after 1990 when upheaval and turmoil erupted in Kashmir. We have Dr. Ashok Bhan, who retired as DG Prisons and has always been the forefront of work in the police department. He has left a mark wherever he went. He is a civil servant, a police officer of exceptional integrity and scholarship. Then we have Professor B.L. Zucchi, who has been a popular professor in various degree colleges in Kashmir and has been an office bearer of teachers' unions and has worked as a bridge between the government and the teachers. And after migration in Jammu, having lived like a refugee himself, he continued to be the spokesperson of the teachers' community. We shall now start the discussion. I think the format will be that every esteemed panelist will make a presentation and I'll ask the question for a minute, and then we can throw the discussion open on the points that may arise. Khoda Sahab, I'll come to you first. You, as I said, have a vast experience. You have handled very sensitive assignments. What would you say is your perspective of why 1990 happened? And after that, how was it possible for you to cope with the challenge which was unprecedented? Because you held many important and sensitive assignments. We'd like to hear that.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Hey, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just adjust the volume. Yes, okay. Let's come first to the point you mentioned in your inaugural points. That is regarding the situation, and you want me to speak particularly on two issues. That's how the 1990 situation developed and how did we cope with it, and on various fronts. The situation of 1990 erupted on account of many issues. It is not a singular issue which drove us to a situation of 1990, but a situation which developed because of factors both local, national and international level. I would not like to elaborate the things too much because most of us know these issues, whether it was the reference of Kashmir to United Nations, which made it a sort of dispute between India and Pakistan, and India, in fact, took it to the United Nations. It was the start of a ongoing confrontation with Pakistan and made the claim of Pakistan look genuine to many international community people. And later on, the issues at national level as vis-a-vis the handling of situation in Kashmir, whether it was political or the security situation. Political situation, I will again be very, very brief because they because it is generally well known and it will be just a mere repetition of the fact, but just touching those facts is that we always try to manage the political setup in Kashmir and did not evolve the democracy in its true fashion to come up and function at a full-fledged scale with the wishes and wishes of the people in a democratic manner. I particularly mention here that, of course, wherever the elements who indulged in anti-national activities, they were to be always isolated. But generally, we had to allow the democratic process to function in its true sense so that government of the people gets thrown up, which can address the people's requirements, the developmental issues, the aspirations, and all other issues, whether it was employment or growth, host of issues which are connected with any set of people. Now, whether it was getting Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad or later on asking Mir Qasim to abdicate in favor of Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah as a part of the settlement, 1975 settlement. And later on, the removal of Dr. Farooq Abdullah in 1984, followed by the last, which generally people refer to as the last straw or the last thing which gave rise to the eruption of militancy or discontent on a large scale was the elections of 1987, where it is generally well known that the elections were not held in a free democratic manner. Now, we had to visualize this situation in the backdrop of the India taking the issue of Kashmir to United Nations, Pakistan's constantly laying claims on Jammu and Kashmir, and trying to push the international community, which in turn can pressurize India to hold plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir, or asking the forces when they were advancing very well in the 1947 war with Pakistan, asking them to stop halfway, thereby drawing a ceasefire line, which obviously meant that it is a temporary line. It's a ceasefire line. That means obviously it is temporary in nature and needs to be resolved at some future time. So all ingredients of a fluid situation were laid because of our handling of Jammu and Kashmir at international level, at the national level, and at the local level. Now, this combined with the discontent and Pakistan's constant effort to create problems in Jammu and Kashmir, which was whether it was 1965 infiltration or prior to that, the Kabali raid in 47. But finally, General Zia Huq's scheme or the strategy which he had worked out, the Operation Tupac, which essentially meant death by 1,000 cuts. And that strategy which was followed at the establishment at the military level in Pakistan, because Pakistan knew in 1947, later on in 65 or 71, that militarily it cannot defeat India to annex Jammu and Kashmir with it. So it followed the policy by which India can be made to bleed constantly, and we saw some of the Kashmiri youth going across the LOC for training in Pakistan, returning back, and we all know how borders were virtually accessible from either side for crossing over, and that facilitated huge numbers of youngsters going across for training and returning back, which started the militancy. And then later on, the consequent events, whether it was exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from Jammu and Kashmir, or the militancy taking different shapes and forms with the help of Pakistan, and their active material support, funding, arms, ammunition, and all sorts of support, which continued in different forms and led to a serious situation. And with that situation, we are still dealing after more than 30 years of terrorism in Kashmir. So,
I'll come back to you, Mr. Khoda. I'll come back to you. Now you've given us a overview of what you think as a civil servant led to the eruption of 1990. Of course, this is the civil servant's point of view. Otherwise, the political point of view is that the accession should not have happened with India. Dr. Bhan, I would like to ask you, what is your perception of the role of the civil servant, especially the Kashmiri Pandit? Was there any sense that there was discrimination against in the civil services? What do you think, and how was it possible for the Kashmiri civil servant, who got all important assignments, to deal with the situation?
Thank you, Mr. Bakaya. I will answer your questions, which have a very limited appeal as far as the audience would be wanting to hear on the role of the bureaucracy in Jammu and Kashmir now and the way forward. You see, to answer your questions, Kashmiri Pandits have been at important positions, and let me put it in Kashmiri, Timano Suk. This Suk is lacking in many members of the bureaucracy, and therefore we had some kind of love for the motherland and for the people of the state, and therefore our approach to the whole issue was different. It was a compassionate issue. It was a sympathetic attitude while dealing with terrorism with strong hands. But the fallout should not be there so that people do not suffer unnecessarily. I am reminded of you being the divisional commissioner of Jammu when the exodus started, and how you were able to handle the things so immaculately, and how we could organize for those who were coming out from the valley. Though the resources were meager, yet I would say that a lot of effort was made, and to the best of your ability and to the team that you led, we were able to do something for them. Now, coming to the role that bureaucracy has now and the way forward, as the topic of this discussion is titled, I would say that democratic governance institutions are assumed to be responsive to the wishes of the public and to be attempting to map those preferences of the public into positive outcomes for the citizens. Now, bureaucracies by definition are meant for effective administration of public programs, but being legalistic, we sometimes tend to be indifferent to the wishes and demands of individual citizens. So bureaucracies by nature tend to be associated with hierarchy and even authoritarian form of governance. In the absence of democratically elected government for quite some time now in Jammu and Kashmir, this authoritarian trait needs to be kept under check, and focus must shift to a citizen-centric governance, which in my view would include many things, and I would cite them very briefly. You see, the point I'm trying to make is that a prolonged period of bureaucratic dispensation.
Yes.
It reduces accountability and makes bureaucracy a bit authoritarian. And we must see that this trend is curbed in the coming days, and so that people are able to get a citizen-centric governance. We are currently a union territory.
क्या कर दिया
By
ये
its
कहाँ
very
है
nature,
नहीं
the UT model of
नहीं है
governance
आवाज आ रही है पूरी आ रही है आवाज
is
नहीं
heavily
ये
weighed in favor of centralization of power and predominance of the say of the
ये
ruling
देखो ऐसे ऐसे
party at the
अब
center.
इसमें से कैसे
So, a
एंटर करेंगे
well-grounded bureaucracy, familiar with the situation on ground, is expected to respond to the wishes of the people and provide succor and seamless public services, irrespective of political affiliations, caste, color, or religion. This is one important area that the bureaucracy must attend to. And then this will also entail providing the right type of advice to the government at the center and the UT on issues like tackling terrorism, separatism, return of peace, reducing alienation, and so on. Now, Bakayas of the bureaucracy will also have to remind itself that they are public servants and they must shun the ivory tower syndrome in a somewhat difficult situation that we are passing through. They will have to reach out to the people to provide services as well as succor. I hope the district developmental councils that are being elected currently will be able to provide some kind of bridge between the people and the bureaucracy in carrying out developmental programs as well as coming to the expectations of the people. Having said that, let me say here, add that post constitutional changes in August 2019, the bureaucracy, the army, police, paramilitary forces, they have performed creditably to the extent that they have not allowed any fallout and they have been able to maintain law and order. So let me stop at that and we can continue the discussion in another round.
Bansab, there's no doubt that the bureaucracy has functioned with great commitment and sensitivity, especially after 1990, when an unprecedented situation happened in Kashmir. And many people in the country do not know how much of a challenge it was for the civil service to keep a geographical area with the country and to keep an alienated population in good humor. And the civil service rose to the occasion. Now, Professor Zuchi, you have been in the thick of things in Kashmir as a teacher. What is the environment in which you worked? Was there any sense of oppression, sense of being ignored and not allowed to function because you belong to a particular community? But was there synergy between in the teaching community? As my experience shows, that the teaching community was cohesive and you gave them leadership and acted as a bridge. And Kashmiri Pandit community professors also blossomed. What's your view?
Right from my childhood, I have seen in 1953 when I was a 7-year child in the lap of my grandfather. I saw the mammoth gathering. I inquired from him what is the problem. He said Sheikh Abdullah has been arrested. I didn't know that time the Sheikh Abdullah and his political attainments. So right from those very days, I have always seen political turmoil in Kashmir, except as when Bakshi Shah was for some time, and then Sheikh Allah after the accord. We had some good years in Kashmir. Rest was always insecurity, more of particularly the community, our community was always target of stones and all that, what has happened. Regarding the teaching community was cohesive, but at the same time, prior to the UGC grades in Kashmir, J&K, the principals of colleges were not appointed as per the seniority or a merit. It was always the selection as per the whims and fancies of the government. It was only because you were the commissioner at that time, education, that after this UGC grades, there was a certain civility in terms of appointments and in terms of selection and in terms of seniority, in terms of attainment of teachers. Prior to that, Justice Murtaza Fazal Ali gave very important judgment that we don't know what metal is changed, what is this gold is changed into clay and clay into diamond. I don't know what type of chemicals they use. That happened. That a first from Banas Hindu University, a professor was not made principal, but a gentleman who had lesser merit was made. The same was the story of Kashmir University also, most of them. Mr. Kashna Pinta couldn't become a director or a professor. Teng Saab was a professor only for a year or so before his retirement. There were so many instances in the Kashmir University. But the UGC grades gave certain cohesiveness in terms. And that time also there's a lot of you know it better. A section of the teachers opposed the grades that time. They want grades, not UGC grades. That time, but finally we got the UGC grades. But basically the political environment always was hostile in terms of the minorities. There's no doubt about it. And in terms of the promotions also. But as teachers, we work with passion, with commitment, with concern. That has been the forte of the Kashmiri professors or teachers anywhere in Kashmir or Jammu or anywhere in the country.
But there's no doubt that the teaching community was cohesive, and even after migration, you continue to have contacts with the teachers, and the contribution of the Kashmiri Pandit teachers, of course, has been phenomenal, and that is recognized by everyone, even from the
we
school
were
stage
cohesive
onwards.
we were a good
But
number of
but
teachers
I
in
would
colleges,
go back to
schools, and
Khoda
universities.
Sahab. Khoda Sahab, I would still insist that we should be able to hear more about how the civil service handled the challenge, although of militancy, which was unprecedented. And you, as the DG and on important assignments, did took certain out of the box initiatives to curb militancy. Would you enlighten us about those? Because those may be lessons for the civil service elsewhere. Although I don't think anywhere else in the country such an upheaval will ever take place as happened in Kashmir in 1990. So we have to recognize, the country has to recognize that the civil service of Jammu and Kashmir, everyone rose to the occasion and curbed militancy and subdued elements which were inimical. So please tell us how this was done. What was the out of the box initiatives that were taken?
Baqai Sahab, again, I'll be very brief, but to start with, let me first of all mention that once this situation erupted suddenly, because we had ignored some intelligence inputs prior to 1990, which gave an indication, a strong indication of the events likely to come. But that apart, once the situation erupted in 1990, the first upheaval which was faced was the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from Kashmir to Jammu. And if I am not trying to overstep the brief, let me mention here that you were the frontline person in Jammu to handle the entire crisis at that point of time as Divisional Commissioner Jammu. And that was a situation which was of unimaginable magnitude and which was dealt with so deftly and so passionately though the resources available were very limited, and the type of support in the form of infrastructure, monetary, and other facilities was limited again for the divisional administration. But the crisis was handled so well and smoothly that finally, gradually, the ease of living of the displaced Kashmiri Pandits became easier to handle for those who came later on to who were your successors subsequently. But as far as the policing is concerned, if you are, when we talk of out of box, we really mean to say that what was done outside the usual working, like we have the core groups and the core meetings, which used to happen where we used to devise entire strategy in consultation with this other security forces and all intelligence agencies operating in J&K. And those operations were very cohesive and result oriented. And Bansab was also IG Kashmir during critical times. And later on, I, as head of the intelligence in two terms for about in 2.5 years each, roughly, and later on as DGP, I also got opportunity to be part of that core group, and where the entire situation was being handled with a lot of coordination and effective management, both human and technical intelligence, combined with the operations by the security forces, where police performed a very important role in the form of execution of the operations, because the police knew the local area very well, and they could handle the local sensitivities in a manner so that our job is done effectively. The terrorists are targeted with iron hands, but at the same time, the civil population is put to least amount of distress and loss. But as far as two incidences I will mention, which of course I have not been talking much because, but which can be of some, some information for the for others. One is the, as DIG of Doda Udhampur range in for about nearly 2 years, we had a unique problem. You know, the terrorism started spreading in the hilly areas of Jammu towards end of 93, but more prominently in 90, towards the end of 94, and it got fully blown as a full-scale terrorism in the entire hilly region of Doda, Kishtwar, Bhadrawa, Banahal, Ghul, and then in Riyasi, Rajouri also later on in 96. And the biggest problem which was on hand at that point of time was that the way terrorists operated in Kashmir and resorted to massacres of KPs at various places and selective killings also to spread fear and among the community, and which resulted in complete exodus. Almost 99% of the Kashmiri Pandits left the valley. Similar situation started getting developed in Doda and upper areas of Udhampur district also, and in Riyasi area also. That was part of Udhampur that time. And we had series of massacres happening in Doda region, and where the minorities who were targeted at some villages, along with the neighboring villages and other areas adjoining to those areas, would come and to the district headquarters or to the sub-division headquarters, and usually take shelter in place of religious like temples and extra, the way it happened in Gita Bhavan in Jammu in 1990. And a similar situation as has happened in Kashmir started developing in Doda region. So we at that time had learned the lesson of the exodus in Kashmir, and we wanted to prevent it. And lots of things were being discussed. And finally, at the end of it, it was with a lot of persuasion of the then government. We had fortunately that time the governance rule, which was more amenable to listening to the ground realities. without any effect of political feedback, because political feedback was against many things which should have happened and could have happened to control the terrorism. But we developed a concept of forming the village defense committees, and once we started propagating with it, and it was with great difficulty that government agreed to it, because it was meant to arm the civilians with prohibited war weapons, and the 303 rifles were to be issued to them. But finally government agreed, and the ground problem then, which later on we faced, was that people were unwilling to take up arms, because the general feeling among the people was that if we take up the arms, we will become targets, and the terrorists will try to attack them. But after great persuasion, especially in Bhadrawa, we were able to break the ice, and just few villages agreed to take up the arms. It, of course, did not stop the massacres. Lots of massacres happened later on also, but the thing which we observed, which came out very interestingly, was that the villages which had been armed with weapons, the terrorists did not attack there. The terrorists, of course, for their own for the sake of their own life, targeted this, were looking for soft targets, and the villages where we had the VDCs were not the soft targets for them. So this quickly also spread among other villages, and then they also started accepting arms. And
So
once
this was a very, very imaginative initiative that you took to preempt exodus. I wish such a plan had been in position to prevent the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. You know, they fled because an atmosphere of fear was created, because there was nobody to stop them, and nobody to the bureaucracy had collapsed, the systems had collapsed, and the civil society was in turmoil. But this VDC did preempt exodus from the Chenab Valley and
absolutely.
Doda and other places.
Not only
Bansab, you are
that, not only that, those people who had migrated already, there was a huge number who had migrated at that point of time. We pursued them, and they started returning
and they
back to
went
their
back.
villages.
They
They
went
went
back
back
to
there.
their villages because they felt a sense of security,
Yes.
which the Kashmiri Pandit does not still feel about going back. Now, Bhansab, you are saying that the way forward is to have a responsive administration, a citizen-friendly administration. Uh, now, do you think today we find that for the last 2 or 3 years there's been an administration which does not have the umbrella of a political system? Now, do you think that for achieving all these objectives of responsiveness, people friendliness, and reaching out is possible only through the bureaucracy, or do they need certain political support?
You see, Mr. Bakaya, the point is that as the situation is currently, we cannot expect the return of a political dispensation anytime soon. So we have to work on a thought that it will take a few months, maybe a couple of years, for democratic process in the real sense of the word. We have district elections, but the real election would be election to the assembly of the UT. So it is going to take some time, and meanwhile we are going to have the bureaucratic dispensation. I would like to highlight what are their challenges, but before that I would like to supplement what Mr. Huda said. You see, the whole plan after 1990 moved along three lines. One was addressing terrorism through synergy between forces, army, paramilitary forces, and the police, creation of SOGs, creation of village defense committees, and the things like that. We also improved our equipment and our technical abilities. This was one line of. Second line was the administration, the bureaucracy, which went into the developmental works and all. And the third important thing that was was a resumption of the democratic process. From 1996, you had elections in 96, 2002, 2008, 2014, and progressively the participation in these elections also increased till 2014. So these were the three lines along which the process of the peace process, shall I say, was progressing in Jammu and Kashmir. Now coming to the current challenges that the bureaucracy faces, including, I would say, bureaucracy, including Jammu and Kashmir police. Another first and foremost is Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, cross-border firing as well as infiltration has increased. Civilians in border areas are suffering human and property losses. Terrorist violence continues unabated. Funding channels will have to be choked, and legal action against perpetrators of violence, it has to be stepped up. So this is one area which is a challenge for the bureaucracy. Second, separatism and alienation. Now, more youth have joined militancy in the recent months. So we have to work on it. That what are the reasons and how they can be brought back. Then development and governance. This would be an important area for the bureaucracy to attend to. Then I would put in importance reducing footprints of uniform in the civilian areas. You see, this would need more involvement and empowering of Jammu and Kashmir police. We would also have to avoid collateral damage. And then above all, we have to handle the pandemic. So you see, there are a series of challenges for the bureaucracy, and only when we are able to have some semblance of peace, then conditions will be conducive for the exiled minority to return to the homeland. So the whole game is that you have to have a plan towards peace. And once the peace is there, then only you can expect that Kashmiri Pandits would be able to go back to the valley.
That's indisputable. But do you think the bureaucracy can play a role in bringing about reconciliation between civil society in Kashmir and the displaced Kashmiri Pandits? What do you think about that?
You say bureaucracy has a limited role and approach. Unless you have political beings, unless you reach out to the politicians who have some kind of knowledge of the ground realities, the bureaucracy alone will not be able to take us far. See, the roadmap that I see, there has to be a roadmap now. The roadmap that I see is, number one, iron fist approach of strict action against terrorism, perpetrators of violence and separatists, number one. Number two, velvet gloves to reduce alienation, bring back misguided youth to the mainstream through policy and programs. Now, these can be definitely devised. And finally, number three, development and citizen-centric governance. Step-by-step reduction of footprint of uniformed forces and resuming democratic exercises. Now, this, Mr. Bakaya, to my mind, is very important. Security forces, police, military, they alone will not be able to take us far.
Zurshid Saab, you have played a very vital role after migration in Jammu. What would you say after things have settled down? What is the future for the Kashmiri Pandit? And could you tell us how you were able to handle the problems of the teaching community after migration? What were the challenges that you faced even in Jammu?
We had tough time in 1990 when we had about 5,000 students without any colleges, then thousands of students in schools without any schools. We had tough time, and you were the DivCom that time. We have been great help from you. We created camp colleges. It was Udhampur College. It was two colleges in Jammu City, one in Kutwa. Then we had Camp University, when we had camp schools. That worked so well because our students got admission in those institutions without creating problems for the institutions which were existing in Jammu City. So that made a very important bearing. So for the academics of Kashmir students were concerned. What is problem for us this time has been that our students are not joining higher education. I find when you move around the universities, I don't find Kashmir Pandit boys and girls. I rarely see a site, whether in JNU, Delhi University, BHU, or any other university excellence. In my time when I was a student at JNU, I had maximum students from Kashmir, particularly Kashmir community of Kashmiri Pandits. But this is where we are missing. The excellence of a community, it is higher education, it is services, which they are not. You did, you and Khada Sahab and Ban Sahab did a commendable job to get students in the services, but so far we have not been able to rope in. That's another challenge we have. Either you don't find in institutions of science, they only go for engineering and computer analysis. So what is missing in our community, the great community as we understand, is the higher education, the research in science, technology, new fields. I'm happy some Muslim boys are concerned Kashmir. You anywhere in India, in university you go, you will find them doing their research. There are, because after my retirement, I was a consultant with Kashmir University for 5 years. I found biochemistry, microbiology, geophysics. They're all trained from America, all those young faculty members. What is missing in my community, I don't find no teachers, because we, as you rightly said in the opening remarks, we had teachers of excellence. I remember those times. In my time also, were brilliant teachers at Kashmir University. This time you don't find teachers, and now there are more colleges in Kashmir, J&K. There are more than 187 colleges. You really find a Kashmiri Pandit professor or a university. All that you find the vice chancellor is a old stock, not a new stock, except this Mr. Nehru, Raj Nehru of the Skill University, who was a student of Camp College. Camp colleges created a class of students in early 90s. Afterwards, after this Maharashtra intervention, good for the community, they got jobs. So our students played safe in terms of future studies. They found, let us go for engineering and get a job. So this higher education created more of challenges for them. They were not ready to accept the challenges. That is the main problem this time we have with the community, that I don't find. Whereas in Kashmir University, I found all the faculties, and this NET test, they qualify there. There's no doubt about it. Our students don't go for that. That is missing in us, in our community. That's what is a sad part when we
You must, Zuchi Saab, you should recollect the role the teaching community played in migration in the evening colleges and the schools. They produced brilliant children and they groomed them to take up big assignments. And I think that was a great achievement. And the teaching community did not waste their time or talent, but that was harnessed towards teaching the youngsters who have done very well. Khada Sahab, what is your perspective on the way forward?
Dr. Ban has already made some very valid points about the way forward. I would just try to give few points, which some of them may be a repetition of what Dr. Ban has already mentioned. There are three main issues on hand for us. One is the insurgency and the role of Pakistan in it, how to deal with it. The second is the political and developmental issues. And third important issue is the return of the Kashmiri Pandits to Valley. Now, on these three factors, we have to have a coherent national and strategy what we can call as Kashmir policy with long-term and short-term measures well enumerated and to be followed strictly, and not to undergo changes depending upon the whims and instant thoughts of politicians and others who are on a particular desk at that point of time. It has to be well thought of policy, and which will follow it minutely. And of course, minor changes will of course keep on happening depending upon the situation. But broadly, we have to have a very strong policy on this. One is Pakistan, how to deal with it. We have had the surgical strikes and Balakot air strikes. That apart, we have to go slightly deep into Pakistan and to have a proactive policy against Pakistan, both on military front, the diplomatic front, and the economic front. Now, targeting the main people inside Pakistan is one of those things which create real fear amongst the enemy. The way the nuclear scientist in Iran was targeted, or prior to that, several other strikes like Osama bin Laden's killing. Unless we carry out those sorts of actions, the deterrence will not be there, and Pakistan will continue. It has been doing so during the last 30 years. Even Balakot strikes or the Uri strikes did not really create the type of fear in Pakistan. They have to be made. We have to make them pay for the misadventures against India.
Are you saying that after abrogation, the strategy has still remained the same? Has there not been any change?
I really don't think so. After Article 370, not only there has been not any visible change vis-a-vis Pakistan, but there has been no change vis-a-vis other issues which I want to touch briefly with the other two issues also, which are of equal importance. That is, diplomatically, we have to isolate Pakistan. We have made some headways in that. And economically, we have to work on the FATF sanctions against them. They how to have trade and water, Indus Water Treaty, and many other issues, how to deal with Pakistan on those issues. So we have to create lots of problems for Pakistan in return for what they are doing against India, and particularly in Kashmir. The other issues which Dr. Ban already pointed out, like funding and infiltration, or the local recruitment, or local operations, I firmly believe that the local operations have all along been going on very well. As far as containment of terrorism is concerned, the security forces and police have done a wonderful job during last, particularly after 1992, when J&K police started coming on its feet. They have been doing a wonderful job, and the operations have been only increasing by day. But that's not going to provide the ultimate solution as long as Pakistan continues with impunity as far its keeping the pot of terrorism boiling in Kashmir is concerned.
So do you think after abrogation, Kashmir has not been mainstreamed yet?
Obviously not. I don't think there have been any follow-up action, except the domicile thing and the land issue. Again, those things have happened on paper, and on ground not much has happened. I don't know exactly what were the expectations of the government to happen. If some people claim that it is going to result in demographic change, obviously not. It is not going to create any demographic change. The article, anything like Article 370 was never existing in other states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, or for that matter, Rajasthan or UP also. We have not seen any demographic change in those states, or dilution of culture, or their local way of living as far as their culture or their living is concerned. For any demographic change, the three essential factors are that either it should be the economic interest, which obviously outsiders have no economic interest in Kashmir in the present situation. It should be a language, or it should be culture. None of the three things are suitable for anybody from outside to come and settle down in Kashmir. So the hoax of crying, that the top of the voice crying that there will be demographic change after 370 removal is just a hoax. It is just to divert the attention. But as far as job opportunities are concerned, the government has to work on it. The private sector has to be developed. The investment flows have to be ensured. The industrialization has to take place. Unless and until we work on the alienation, we work on the job creation, so that the youngsters who are without jobs, they feel satisfied in their work, Otherwise, they are idle minds who easily fall prey to brainwashing of the separatists or the anti-national elements, and they go into terrorism the way it happened during Burhan Wani's time.
It
And
seems,
unless
it seems, Khoda Sahab, that after abrogation, things have not changed, and the language that we're using about what to do is the same language that we used before abrogation, which means that maybe a lot needs to be done to mainstream the Kashmiri emotionally and to make him think for the country. Zurchi Saab, what do you think is the way forward now?
I would like to add just two
Yes.
points to it. The governance issues, they remain a matter of concern. The transparency and good governance, the developmental issues, they are not happening on ground. We expected huge developmental work to be taken up after imposition of president's rule in 2018. That is more than 2 years back now. Not much has really happened. The infrastructure, unless government wants industrialization, job creation, unless you have the basic three issues of providing infrastructure, pani, bijli or road, sadak, you cannot have. Otherwise, there are huge areas of development in tourism, in horticulture, in power sector, in local handicrafts, the carpet weaving and all those things which are inherently the ancient trades of Kashmiris. We have not been able to facilitate the development of these things in Kashmir. Now, unless and until government works very strongly on having the developmental issues addressed very strongly and in a realistic manner, we are not going to achieve the target of getting people out of alienation or putting them back on developmental path. They will always fall prey to Pakistani propaganda and to the propaganda of people like Gilani and others.
It seems,
So we
it
have
seems
to,
the government of India, after abrogating 370, thought that everything had become now hunky dory and
I think,
became complacent. Zurchi Saab,
I think
what do you
like,
think is the way forward for the Kashmiri Pandit, especially?
No, Kashmiri Pandits want to go back to their homeland, that because that's our roots, our culture. Because we cannot create a culture in a different milieu. We want to go back to our homeland. That's very important. But the government of India has to think in terms of our return to Kashmir, because I can understand.
It-
Because when you meet people around of my community, they want to go back, but as Bansal has rightly said, but there has to be a strategy on behalf of the government of India. And number two, as
There has to be
Khurasa
a
rightly
roadmap.
said, we have not seen much development in terms of Jammu and Kashmir after the abrogation of Article 370. I mean, young people are demanding jobs. There's not much of to be seen around in Jammu and Kashmir. So, as that Article 370 is all right, but uh, there's no throwing of milk in Tavi or Jahlim after the abrogation. So,
But
for
don't
that
you
matter,
think there is
the government
also
of India has
need to
to create
work on
some
removing
foundations.
mistrust, hatred, and between the communities before any step can be taken
And
towards
that's important
the homeland?
because
If you
we
recall,
have to live together.
when there was talk of the Kashmiri
We have to
Pandit being
move.
settled, the Hurriyat went up in arms and said this will change the demography. What a laughable proposition. Just 2 to 3 lakhs or 7 lakh people going there and changing the demography. Now, how do you tackle this kind of a mindset? Is there a resistance to the return of the Kashmiri Pandit, or is there a desire that they come back? And should the civil society on both sides work towards this kind of a reconciliation and removal of this mistrust, hatred, and what do you think?
Civil society has to work. After my retirement, I was for 5 years as a consultant at the Kashmir University. I worked so nicely. You have also visited the Kashmir University those days, because when you create an environment, because you keep on meeting and creating this, because without meeting and understanding and comprehending the issues, what is the problem is the mistrust now. And those elements, as jihadi element, they will create a problem of our not coming back to Kashmir. Their agenda is that. But that is for the government of India and the civil society of both Kashmir and Jammu to create an environment, as a suitable environment for a return and rehabilitation. And we cannot return without insecurities. And we have to have safety there in Kashmir. And then we have to be a place where we can stay there, which is secured land for that matter. So it's not
And
that because
we would like to be,
right
you
now,
Kashmiri Pandit would like to be welcomed back. He wouldn't like
exactly.
to be seen as being unwelcome. So for that, a certain environment has to be
Right.
created. Bhansab, now,
Created.
what is your overall overview? You were saying that political government dispensation is required for the bureaucracy to function well. You're also saying that citizen-friendly governance administration. You're also anticipating that in the near future there may not be any political arrangement in place. So, do you think that things should be allowed to move as they are moving, or there should be more infusion of dynamism by sensitizing the officers like they were during the peak of militancy? You, Khoda Saab, and so many others were sensitized to the need. Today, there seems to be lack of sensitization. It is a bureaucratic approach. Do you think this needs to be changed?
Is Bakaya Sahab, as I mentioned before also, that you see the bureaucratic dispensation has its own limitations. So ultimately, we have to work towards a duly elected government through a credible process. Now, I would take it forward from what Mr. Jutsi and Mr. Kota said and try to conclude by saying that, you see, we need a vision and a roadmap. A roadmap basically for peace. Now, peace would have many elements. It would have reduction of violence, it would have development, and it would have democratization, it would have reduction of footprints of the forces, but there should be a plan in place. As Mr. Kota said, that this plan should not be changed with changing of heads on different chairs. So then the plan has to be put into practice, and this plan, and to achieve these goals, the local officers will play a pivotal role. Please don't ignore
Khoda
that.
Saab,
Trust needs to be placed in them as they are privy to the expectations of the people. So I would recommend a roadmap, trust in local bureaucracy, and move forward to achieve the aim of
Khoda Saab,
democratically
I'll give you
elected
the
government.
last word. Do you think civil society has any role to get a roadmap prepared? Can civil society give inputs for the preparation of this roadmap that Bhansab is talking about? After all, you cannot isolate the people who matter from the strategy that you are thinking of. Their inputs are vital.
Obviously, any roadmap will be governed by the feedback we have from the civil society. And civil society consisting of cross-section of people representing all thoughts and shades of people. And they essentially, while framing that roadmap, we have to keep certain facts, certain things in view. One is that the integrity of the country has to be kept intact. The constitution has to be upheld, and the basic issue should be to control the violence, to bring peace to state, and also to remove alienation. These factors are very important for that. And the role of politicians, as has been brought out, the bureaucracy and the civil society has to play a role, but the role of politicians becomes very important. If we see the past, right from 1947, the politicians have been trying to play vote bank politics role. Depending upon what the people would like to hear, they have been misguiding the people in general, talking about the things which are not achievable. Now, as long as politicians continue with that role, talking in terms of things which are not achievable for people and giving them hope and making them aspire to achieve certain things which are not possible, this discontent will continue, and the role of civil society, whatever it is, that will go into background, because politicians have the mesmerizing power on population, and when they go on the stage and talk to people, that has more effect on the common people than the bureaucrats and any other people in the society. So the politicians have to come out very straightforward, tell the people what is achievable, and whatever is achievable within those limits, educate the people what can be done and what should be done and what we can provide and what the government of India should provide and what the state government can provide to them. But as long as they continue to be misled, like we have to now, 370 has been imposed, it's a matter in Supreme Court. Now nobody talks about Supreme Court. They talk that we will reverse the process of 370. It is not possible for J&K politicians to reverse that process. Likewise, many times hopes are given that now some people, those who were till other day were talking in terms of integrity of the country and also in terms of plebiscite, foregone issue, and that is not possible because the situation has changed, which actually it has changed on ground, and it is not possible to implement that sort of resolution, which in any case is more than 70 years old and has become already obsolete.
Khoda
But
Sahab, we're running out of time now.
absolutely, the role of politicians, they have to be. What I mean to say is that the politicians have to play their ball very correctly. They have to be straightforward. They don't have to misguide the people. They should talk realism and try to take the people on the right path so that lasting peace is ensured and the J&K people can prosper the way we want them to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've had a interesting discussion. The crux of the matter is that the bureaucracy has played a very important role during the peak of militancy, and Khoda Sahab and Bhan Sahab Zutchi Sahab epitomized the best in the civil service who faced the challenge. And now our experience teaches us that we have to move forward and not remain trapped in a time warp. And to move forward, we have to learn the lessons from the past, give a sensitive, proactive, responsible government, give local officers important assignments, pat them on the shoulder, and make them move ahead. And that is the way that the situation in the state, which is much better than it was in the 90s, improves. And as Khoda Sahab says, the whole of the population enjoys the benefits of development and prosperity. We hope that the new year will bring us some hope of joy. Thank you very much, Khoda Sahab, Bhan Sahab, and Zutchi Sahab.